Um, I did position myself with a tree sort of over here behind me a little bit, and so you can see that that was on purpose because we're gonna do Christmas stuff today, and I want to make sure that you guys are fully aware of where we're going. Any of our guys are going to jump in as well. So here's what we're going to do, and we may not get to the quick hit, so we may have to take the quick hit and put it into a deep dive for those of you that are like, man, I really need to have a conversation. We may not get to the quick hit today because we started out kind of building this Christmas survival stuff and it kind of took on a life of its own. So apologize ahead of time, but we will get to that. So I'm assuming you guys are in full Christmas mode. By the way, our guys are in the chat. And so if there's things that come up, questions or comments or reflections, throw it in the chat. Or as always, feel free to unmute. By the way, is there anybody new on the call today? I apologize. If you're here for the first time, just unmute real quick. I don't know if I see anybody that's like a rookie, but if you are, don't be shy. Unmute and introduce yourself in like 10 seconds and where you're at, what you're doing. Going once, going twice. Cool. All right. So we want to talk about Christmas survival guide and Christmas number one priority. Here's the survival guide. And this is a little bit from the Monday Fuel that we put out maybe earlier this week. I can't even remember now. My week is running together. But I don't know what your potential climate or culture is wherever you are serving, or what climate or culture you have the ability to actually set. But I've been in plenty of cultures, and maybe some of you by the nod of a head, where over time, potentially over seasons, we get into this amazing season of Christmas where we get to reflect on this amazing moment. And for a lot of us, because of our responsibilities within church leadership, it almost takes on a dark tone rather than a light of the world tone. And so part of what we wanted to do today was number one, just encourage those of you that have taken the time to be on the call with some maybe some perspectives that might be helpful as you head into this season. But secondly, as with all the stuff that we talk about here, it's probably something that you can grab and maybe sit down with your team in the next 10 days before they get too deep into it and kind of help them guide them so that you can come out the other side. One of the interesting parts about the holiday season is it can tend to be a grind depending on how we go with it. And then we head right into January, which typically is a season of momentum, freshness, new stuff, things that we're trying to grind into. So we're going to argue today that if we approach this holiday season with a little bit more healthy perspective, that it's actually not only going to give us a better holiday season, maybe more impact, but also a better first trimester of 2026, between January and Easter of next year. So on your screen, I'm screen sharing. Can you guys all see that? And by the show of nodding, can you guys see that? Caleb, take the cigar out of your mouth and nod. Thank you. All right. So the way I want to approach this, and again, any of our guys jump in if you want to add to this a little bit, is it sounds kind of artsy fartsy, but I think this is important. You guys are the leaders in the room that get to choose the story that you live out, but not only that you live out, but that your team lives out this holiday season. So I want to challenge you on November the 19th to maybe pause a little bit, reflect, and as you move into this next few weeks, maybe choose to live a little bit of different story than you've ever done before with your team in regards to how you guys have approached it. So let me give you some key elements of it. Number one is there's a lot of narratives. I've sat in rooms with my team in the past where literally the season hasn't started yet, and people are already projecting fatigue and burnout and tiredness into the room. I don't know if you guys have ever had that happen or if you've been the one doing it, where it's like you're not even there yet, but you're already sort of preemptively going, man, I'm tired and I haven't even started yet. We just really want to encourage you to choose a better story, a better inner story that's then going to help shape the experience of your team. We have been placed in leadership, and we have been invited to steward leadership by God, um, in a way that should be reflected not just in what's going on inside of us, but on inside of us is going to reflect on our team. So I want to just challenge you right now to go, okay, I've got to choose a better story, even if historically this has been a season that my head wants to blow off. So I want to do that. Oftentimes in our SMP, and I think Kay is on the call, but I don't know if he's able to even if he might be multitasking. But at the end of all of our SMPs, we typically talk a lot about the story of Jesus turning water into wine in John chapter 2. It's an amazing narrative for leaders. You may not have ever reflected on it through the lens of leadership before, but you guys all know the story. But the story, you're like, Lee, this isn't a Christmas story, but stay with me for just a minute. The story is really about the first miracle of Jesus. There's this wedding that goes on for days. Jesus is there, his mom is there. Um, the wine that is there to kind of fuel the party runs out. Jesus is approached by his mother. He kind of blows his mother off, which is kind of a humorous part of the Bible. And then goes to the servants and he instructs the servants to fill up all of the water jars that they can find to the rim. And once they've done that, with all that effort to then take the water jugs to the kind of the principal of the party, the master of the party, and have them taste the water. And the water, as we know the end of the story, the water turns into wine. It's fabulous wine. They talk about how, why haven't we served this before? That's not really the point I want to reflect on today. The point I want to reflect on today is that the servants had this amazing perspective to live out the story of what they were the only ones who actually knew the story behind the story. And it was an amazing privilege that they had, but it was also amazing responsibility. And they actually put their neck on the line. The part we don't talk about often is they had no guarantee that they weren't serving water. They had to step out in that faith in this rabbi that they barely knew. And you go, again, what does this have to do with Christmas? I think it has to do with us forming the narrative of our story as leaders that says, I get this inside track to be able to present the beginning of this amazing plan that God has for his creation. And I get to watch and see stories behind the scenes in proximity that nobody else gets to see. If nothing else, our Christmas story needs to involve, yes, I'm going to do 7 services over 3 days, and I'm going to preach Christmas messages that I'm tired of preaching on Mary, Joseph, and the babe. But at the end of the day, we are the ones filling up the water jars and the water buckets, and we get to watch with knowledge that no one else has that become a miraculous thing that provides transformation and something no one else expected. So, if nothing else, let's look at this 2025 Christmas season as kind of a John 2 moment where we are servants and we get the story that nobody else gets to tell. And that's pretty awesome because then we get to see all those things that are really happening. Some of that has to do with what we call glimpses, which is if you're going to pay attention, you're going to see things that are there. We've listed some of them here on the screen, but a lot of them are pretty ordinary, you guys. And as you talk to your team about this, I would encourage you to just go, man, where are we seeing volunteers step up like never before? Where are we seeing people lead like they've never seen before? Some of you are doing end of year Christmas offerings, legacy offerings. Where are we seeing generosity just go crazy where we hadn't seen that before? These are just small glimpses that, alongside the John 2 perspective, can help us to recalibrate the story. Anybody on our team or anybody on the webinar, this is where Lee asked a question and it could get really awkward. So some of you are going to love this. But anybody want to really help us here, maybe build on this narrative a little bit and talk about either confess a little bit and be vulnerable, or also help us a little bit with how you form this story as you head into this season before we move forward in this convo. Maybe some of you have got some great perspective that you should share with the rest of us.
I'll just kick it off by saying there's never enough gratitude that you can deliver in this season for your staff, for your volunteers, for your team, for everybody. And don't just do hey, appreciate everybody. It's been a great year. Like really take a walk, make that list and share it with the whole world. Share it with your team, your key volunteers, share it from the stage. Man, gratitude matters so much this time of year, especially with all the asks of like, hey, volunteer for Christmas and make a year-end gift and do all of these things. We have got to make sure that gratitude is top of the list.
Mm. There are
Hey,
a
can
lot of
I?
asks, aren't there? Yes, please jump in. Whoever that is, I can't see the whole screen.
Yeah, it's Finkbeiner. Brandon, can I ask a question based on that? So, for the last week and a half, I've just felt this real tension So I've been at the church for a year and a half. We've grown by about 400 people, so 800, about 1,200. And I'm just seeing all the deficiencies right now in our systems, in our staff, and especially coming into Christmas and like outreach events. I just it's taken everything in me to not walk into our staff's office and be like, all right, listen, come on, guys, we got to get this shit done. Otherwise, we're not going to make it. And so, how do I temper? Because I think that's a good word for me. How do I temper celebration with seeing the things that need to get done and recognizing that maybe we're not going to get them done this Christmas? Or what do you do there?
Mm,
I would say you've got to share your heart first, man. You know, especially being new, you've got to share your heart for those people. You got to know their kids' names. You got to know your staff names. We're praying for your kids this Christmas that they have a great, great Christmas time. You got to find the areas that you can show gratitude and appreciation. And obviously, you still got to address the
mm,
things that need to get done. But if you don't lead with, hey, we're going to take a time right now to pray for all of our families and our kids this Christmas.
yeah.
We're all busy. We're all going to be running around like crazy this next month. And I just want to pray for all of your kids, all your families. I appreciate all the hard work that's going to be done. And then you can lead into the like, hey, gang, here's the
Mm,
priorities. Here's what we need to get
right.
done. But if you don't lead with that kind of heart of gratitude, no one wants to follow that. And I think all the stuff that you're worried about, good news, Kevin. It's all going to be, there's going to be a whole nother list next year. You're still going to have the
Right.
same conversation no matter how far you grow. That's what we love about doing SMPs at Growmentum. We do them and you identify where you want to be and have that big, long vision. Well, that takes years. It takes years of working through
Yeah.
that. And you don't arrive. You just get to that place where you go, man, we're growing. We're getting 1% better every week, every year. And don't live in that frustration because there's always going to be problems. Always. I could
I
rant.
think,
Appreciate that.
yeah, it's Kevin, it's kind of like, and for everybody, it's kind of like we all have short-term memory, don't we? And I get it, right? Like, and I'm not downplaying the intensity of what we need to get done and what is there, but when we think back about 2024, because I was looking back even at our calls over the last few years, yesterday, just kind of prepping for today. It's like 2024 Christmas happened, 2023 Christmas happened, 2020, right? So again, I'm not trying to downplay the urgency of 2025. I just think some perspective around most of it's going to get done, some of it may not get done, and in 6 weeks, no one's going to care, frankly, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like a level of like reality and expectation, and we use the word tension a lot. Like, what is the reality and what is the tension, right? And I would even, this wasn't on our plan, but I think you have the role as a leader, and I could have done this a lot better when I was leading team, but we have the role of a leader of almost helping them prioritize those things as well. And I'm not just speaking to Kevin, like your list of your team is probably really long, maybe even longer than because you've got your own list and then they've got an additional list alongside the personal stuff that they're doing. And so I would invite them to invite you into a conversation around what is the highest priority. It's literally what we do around a year-long plan, right? But what
Hmm.
if we do that around the holiday season? Okay, these are the non-negotiable things that are the highest priority to Kevin, because they may think they're doing the things that are the most important, and it may be number 10 on your list that you happen to mention at a meeting. I wish we could do this, and now they're all putting their energy here, and the things you most care about, that the ball's going to get dropped are here. So we do have some responsibility to give them clarity around where we want that limited energy to be spent.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments or help on that? The chat's blowing up, so if you're not in the chat, take a look at it. Brian put a great quote in there from the Pope, Andy Stanley. Unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude. So I don't even think I have to interpret that for us. So let's make sure that we're doing that and doing it well. Anybody else want to jump in? Help us? Cool. Let me go to this next slide, and then we'll probably have a moment for some more conversation. Um, what's really key here is this idea that of cynicism and comparison and the drift that goes there. So I just want to call out what some of us might be feeling, is that if we allow ourselves to start from a place of fatigue and potentially not run a reasonable play for our own personal lives and our team's lives during this season, Cynicism and comparison, and the drift from the mission that we actually have is going to get a hold of us really, really quickly. If you don't know it, in about 3 weeks, everybody's Instagram's going to start blowing up around how incredible their Christmas services were, how much more incredible they were than your services, how many angels they had flying through their auditorium, and you didn't have any, all of that stuff. So just be aware of that and be on top of it that you know that that's going to happen. Hopefully that's not their intent, but that cynicism and comparison can erode our calling. You guys are called to your specific place. This is such a key for what we as a network at Grow Momentum have tried to say. You look at this call, if you make your screen wide and you look at all the little Hollywood squares, throwback reference for those of you that get it, that are there. You got people on here from all different geographical areas, all different church backgrounds, all different church styles, that are here. But at the end of the day, we all are called to that specific area contextually to write this Christmas story well. So alongside the gratitude, more gratitude will press cynicism and comparison down. Celebrate and encouragement will keep you alive, right? So a lot of celebration, seeing those stories, and then ultimately just that better narrative. We are the leaders, so the story we choose becomes the story others experience. I really like that. So you guys are going to set the tone. So if your team is fried, or if they're cynical or all those things, maybe they're flawed, or maybe they're following a flawed leader that needs to reset a little bit. Maybe they're just reflecting what they see in the offices and on weekends in front of them. So sorry, if you need to leave the call now, we completely understand. But it's just important that we do that. Any comments on that before we move?
One comment I'll make,
Jeff.
cynicism, I think this goes in some sense to what Kevin was asking about his situation, growth. You're walking your staff, you can become a cynic of the staff because the staff's not creating the systems, or systems are behind. I think one of the things I see where we find cynicism to be the outcome is when we're reactive in leadership. And so in the same way, like you're encouraging us, hey, like what are we going to do to start planning to get ahead? What are we doing to think about the future? I think we become the cynic when we're behind and we're dealing with the tyranny of the urgent, rather than actually like strategically saying, hey, what are the hills we need to climb right now, which will give us more joy in the first place. And so like I think becoming a cynic helps us become a mirror to say, hey, what's causing that? And what do I need to do to get ahead? I think that's a question that we can actually look as reflection, as opposed to just be discouraging to ourselves.
Somebody, I can't, I'm going to mess the quote up. Jeff, that's so good. Somebody a few months ago defined cynicism for me, and I'm going to mess it up, so forgive me. But they basically said that it's someone who had passion and was disappointed. That cynicism is passion that has experienced disappointment. And so cynicism starts with somebody who is extremely passionate about something. They get disappointed and it immediately converts to cynicism. So cynicism doesn't exist without passion having existed at some point in the past. And I think that's kind of a powerful journey to think about when we wrestle with our own cynicism. It's like, what happened to the passion, and what disappointments did I experience that caused me to get here?
Yeah,
So
moments of filters as leaders that we can say, hey, what's causing this?
yeah.
And so
Awesome. Any other comments on top of Jeff? Thanks, Jeff. That's awesome. Before we move, we're going to pivot a little bit. Stay at Christmas, but pivot.
I like that comment from Jeff. I just wanted to throw in here, like what made me think of like evaluating. We always have that option. I think sometimes we think like when we're in those growth seasons, we have to have it all figured out and have to have the perfect system and the perfect plan. There's this whole other process of you're allowed to evaluate how it went and let the balls drop a little bit in a season. Not that you want to lose people, and we take this
Right.
really seriously and we care, but I think for us, a really helpful an option in our minds that helps us is knowing that we can evaluate this and we can do better next year. We get a whole
Andrew,
calendar year for next year's Christmas, 2026 Christmas, and we're going
Andrew,
to learn
talk
a
about
lot from 2025.
how does that work out in your situation? If you can explain a little bit, like, is that just something that hit you, or is that something that you've tried to live out?
No, it's something we
Maybe a little
do.
bit of
Yeah,
both.
we try to live it out. We do the way it works here, we do a right, wrong, missing, confusing after
Sure.
everything we do. And
Sure.
so after Christmas season, we will do a right, wrong, missing, confusing on our Christmas Eve service. And
Hmm.
we'll celebrate, but we'll also talk about those wrong, missing, confusings. I mean, nuts and
Hmm.
bolts stuff that I think everybody knows on here, but that becomes an Asana project. That becomes a
Right.
list. That becomes a recurring task. So we hit those things the next year and hope that we can do a little bit better. And those little
Hmm.
improvements, like you said, 6 months later, you don't care. No one cares about
Hmm.
2023 Christmas right now. But 2023 Christmas informed 2025
There,
Christmas 2 years later with those little
bro,
improvements over time. So we're in the long game.
that's so good. If you got on the call today and you heard what Andrew just said, that's strong. The 2023 Christmas should be informing 2025. You might not even recognize it or know it, but it's actually true if you did the evaluation on that back end, on the back end of that experience 2 years ago. And if you haven't been doing that, welcome to 2025, because there's a thing. And four helpfuls is what Andrew was talking about. What's right that need to amplify, what we use it all the time, what's wrong we need to fix. Kay also has, if he's willing to share, and he's a little incognito in the chat, but we also have a tool that's sort of beta that he might be willing to share, that's kind of a riff on the four helpfuls, that's really event driven, that really speaks to, we just did this Christmas thing, Christmas services, and it's geared towards kind of unpacking, did we accomplish our why behind it? So if he's kind, he may share it with you, or something in the chat, but we'll never know unless we see it pop in there. But it's super good, but it's super early in its usage. So Andrew, thanks for that, bro. I appreciate it. Let's pivot to give you guys a little practical thing on Christmas. I don't know. There's two books, one of which we're going to talk about in the future. So I'm not even going to tell you what it is, but they're closely related to the book that we're going to use as a jumping off point for this next part of our conversation. If any of you have read the book Unreasonable Hospitality, it's yellow. If you watched The Bear and are willing to admit that you watched it, I think in season 1 or 2, there's a scene where he's reading it, where he's actually reading it. It's a guy by the name of Will Guidara who had arguably the finest restaurant in the world for a number of years in New York City. And he wrote about this idea of how they created a culture of unreasonable hospitality. So the last couple of days, I've just not been rereading it, but just filtering through it. So number one, if you haven't read it, you should grab it today. Maybe one of our guys will drop the link in the chat. Number two, if there's people on your team who are direct, it's probably a book that your entire team could use no matter what their role is. But if you have people that are at the front lines of hospitality, guest experience, connections, it's probably a must read for them. And it's obviously not a church book. It's a restaurant customer service book, but the translation of it is phenomenal. And I'm going to do my best over the next 10 minutes to kind of try to translate it to an element of Christmas that you still have time to address if you haven't addressed it already. Because you're probably in that mode right now where you've obviously put your service times in place. You're probably finalizing any kind of promotional stuff and marketing that's going on, depending on how preemptive your team is. You're grinding through what is that going to look like on our Christmas services. You're in some of the weeds or details, or your team is around that. But this conversation over the next 10 minutes is still gettable. It's not too late to still make some, because it's more of a mindset than a practical jump. Okay. So the mindset really starts with this. Will says this. I love this quote. He said in the book, hospitality is the art of making people feel seen. As you guys do your Christmas services, however those are going to come together with whether it's your Sunday stuff or whatever it is, um, you're going you are hopefully going to be seeing and receiving a lot of people that you either haven't seen for a real long time, minimal 12 months, maybe longer, or people that you've never seen before. And you have the opportunity to value hospitality. And I'm going to say something that maybe you might push back on, which is totally fine. But part of what we want to talk about is the idea that hospitality matters more at Christmas. Okay. And even scripturally thinking about God coming near as part of what we talk about a lot. Your message on Christmas may be that, but think about the indirect tie-in to the fact that we need to move near in a hospitable manner to people during this Christmas season. And so just some quick hits here around that, and then we're going to dive deeper into the practice. Just think about the way that people arrive, right? They arrive at Christmas, your Christmas service, whether it's on a Sunday or you're lighting some candles on Christmas Eve. And we hope and trust that maybe there's at least a level at which there's an openness, though we'll talk about the uniqueness of that at Christmas to the people that are there. We also secondarily, and you need to make sure your impressions teams know this, that first impressions is not disconnected from spiritual transformation. That what people experience in community when they walk into your environments can have a positive or a negative effect around what opportunity. We want to create space for the Holy Spirit to move in people's hearts. We can't do that work. But unfortunately, if we're not hospitable in creating that space, we can actually become a lid or become a block or a detriment to what the Holy Spirit wants to do. And so, in the character of God, we see hospitality as being a part of that. Here's what's unique about Christmas. And Kay, if you're on here, please unmute and address this. This is what we call the spiritual spectrum. Kay, are you on here and able to speak real quick? Just in the chat. This spiritual spectrum is something that
Yeah,
if we do,
I'm
oh,
here.
there he is. Okay, it's on the screen.
Yeah, this is something that we have been playing around with for the last several years, specifically because I think most of the times we kind of say Christmas and Easter, it's when all the new people come. And that's not necessarily true. Also, the fact that we know that church attendance is really connected to, and the large Sundays are really connected to maybe the people who are fringe people that are actually coming more often or are actually coming to the place. But specifically for Christmas and Easter, one of the things we started doing and understanding as we started talking to churches is that the crowd at Christmas is a little bit different than the crowd at Easter. And so when we look at the spiritual spectrum, 0 is the point of conversion of someone's individual's life towards salvation. -5 is somebody who's very, very antagonistic and far from Jesus, and +5 is a mature follower of Jesus. And so on the spectrum, if an individual actually comes, Christmas actually brings a little bit more of the audience of the people who are actually a little bit even more disengaged with the church or with Jesus than an Easter does. So I think we got a next slide, right? There, Lee.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Yep, there it is.
Christmas, yeah. So specifically for Christmas, it draws a little bit more the unchurched crowd, and Easter draws more the de-churched crowd. Specifically for Christmas, it's this cultural moment. They're all open. They see Christmas everywhere, whether it be in the malls or whether it be just in everything they experience. And so they're much more open to coming to church, even though they might be a little bit further from Jesus or from the church. And so they'll always come with on the arm of a friend or a family member specifically, because this is part of tradition. And this is part of what they do on a yearly basis. And so because of that, we have found that to be a little bit different than Easter. Well, because of that, if the audience is different and our target is potentially different, then our expectations of those individuals should be different, maybe on the other side of things. So those are some of the thinkings that we've had around this.
That's awesome. So what I'm trying to tee up is really this next slide, and we're going to go 2 slides ahead real quick because I put them in the wrong order. So Kay was just talking about the spiritual spectrum. We also have something, and it's funny when we're all talking about being on the spectrum, it's another thing that's not what we're talking about, where we talk about the influence spectrum, which comes from Church on Mission and the influence spectrum. And I don't want to get lost in this, but I need you to stay with me for a second because it's important when it comes to hospitality. When Kay was talking about your people that come in at Christmas are typically that are not your church people are going to be a little further to the left as far as their connection to God. This is where we look at what is our target as far as what we are trying to accomplish. This is the part of this 60-minute call that if you miss everything else, I really want you to catch is that we talk about moving people from the left here. This is how people are related to your church. The previous one was how are people in their relationship with Christ? Okay. So if we think about people are more to the left on the spiritual spectrum, then for us as a church, when it comes to our Christmas outward focused stuff, we need to be looking a little bit more to the left potentially on this influence spectrum. In other words, how what are we doing in the area of exposure where people are now knowing that we exist because of whatever that is that we are doing around the holiday season that they might get drawn into, invited to by a family member, coworker, etc. And how do we then build endearment, which means they're exposed to us and now they actually care that we exist because they came. Here's my caution. I think that some of us are going to obsess, and some of you may not like this, but you're still going to love me. You're going to obsess over engagement at Christmas and you're going to be frustrated. Okay, you might not even be able to call out what your Christmas frustration is. And you've been listening to us for 40 minutes talk about write another narrative, but you've got this frustration from 2022 in the sense that you've got this really cool January series on sex and marriage that you're going to promote on Christmas Eve because you think everybody's going to come January 4th and show up from lighting the candle. And on January 4th, you're going to see more people because it's January, which is awesome. But if you went back and really looked at the connection to Christmas Eve, it may be less exciting or less productive than you think. And that's going to lead to some frustration. Let me attempt to free you from that frustration right now and say hospitality is focusing in a Christ-like way on the left side of that influence spectrum. That we know that people on the left are coming and we want to build exposure and we want to increase in endearment and knowing that engagement we trust will follow. It's not an end of itself. I just think if we are pushing everybody from Christmas services to a next step next week, your frustration is going to be high. Not encouraging you not to point them to a next step. I'm encouraging you to focus more of your team's energy on the endearment and hospitality that that person receives towards the future engagement that they will eventually, hopefully, step into. You tracking with me? And so that's where this whole hospitality conversation comes in, because you're going to be tempted to assess over how do we get them back January 4th. And I'm just encouraging you, prove me wrong, but Christmas is much more of the longer engagement game to move them towards engagement. Okay, it's not a non-engagement event, but it's a little bit more of a longer game. That's why we say exposure and endearment are the keys to your primary Christmas invite service, right? That exposure with hospitality is let them see the beauty of community. Let them walk into your gathering and feel like this is cool. People love each other, right? Let them catch a glimpse of what it looks like to live out community in the kingdom of God, right? Expose them to that. Then endear them. Make it great. Make sure that they're known, they're welcomed. This is all pretty obvious stuff, but I'm not sure that it's obvious to us all the time or obvious to our team, right? Make them feel safe, make them feel valued, some small acts of kindness that they're going to leave and go, man, I don't know if I'll be back next week, but that church freaking rocks. And those people were amazing and they were not stereotypically what I thought they were going to be. I'm going to open it up for some combo, but let me give you one more slide before we do that. This is Will plus something that we added today. Okay. He talks about different levels of hospitality. Level one is what we call functional hospitality. That means go back to your teams and make sure we are organized to be as hospitable as possible, that we have teams in place, that our facility, no matter how small or large, is sharp. It's not in disarray, that it's reflective of who we are, that we are organized and how people are going to come in, depending on our scale. But what are they going to experience in the parking lot? Are they going to walk through darkness 100 yards with no one greeting them? What does that look like? That's the we are organized part of hospitality. The emotional hospitality is how do we actually make sure they understand that we are pumped they are there? that is happening. And we need to think about that. We need to go back to our teams and make sure that they are on point, that this is more than just a normal Sunday. And then the spiritual hospitality is both our teams and then those of you on the call that's going to have a role in actually presenting the gospel story of Christmas there, right? It's that we want them to understand spiritually that God sees them and that this is the place that you can encounter him and this place is for you. I love this so much. Like I was like, this is so great to go to your teams and go, how are we doing across functional, emotional, and spiritual hospitality for those on the left side of the spectrum? Okay. So I'm gonna pause and give people a chance to respond or call me a heretic if you need to. All right. Anybody want to respond to that or ask questions or give us some more thoughts around this idea of exposure endearment in a hospitable environment? Ready, go. Brian?
I'll give just we stumbled on a hospitable way this past Sunday. It was pouring down rain, which is rare where I'm at now, and people are walking in, running in with their grumpy faces, and we just happened to have some families serve in hospitality with their kids. And when the kids made eye contact and said good morning and happy Sunday, it was
Right.
automatic smiles. Like they could
Mm,
not smile. And so we asked the question, what can we do to not just welcome people through the doors, but also see them once they're in the doors? And we're going to do kids slash families walking around with plates of cookies and different things and offering them to people. And rather than like a table of food or a place to go get coffee, we probably will still have those things. But kids walking up to people and
right.
greeting them with or without a parent is a pretty wonderful experience, especially at Christmas time. So that's just a way for people to be seen and cared for, but also a unique way to do it.
Love it. Thanks, Brian, for the practice. Love it, love it, love it. The extension out, all of those things. I'm not even sure so much that a lot of you on the call need to regroup, but I do. I'm sorry, need to reset. I think you just need to regroup a little bit potentially. That you need to circle back in the midst of all the invites and go, is our team prepared to present a hospitable environment for those that are coming onto our campus? Aimed not at the church person, but aimed at the person on the left of the spectrum. Any other comments or thoughts on that? Austin, you and I talked a little bit about this when we chatted one-on-one on Monday. You probably went back and said, okay, what are we doing that? Is there things that you felt convicted around that maybe you'd share as I call you out on the call?
Yeah, I think you really helped me kind of like in our team, what are our expectations? And we were really leaning into the engagement. And I think, we were talking about it as a team, like, you know what? This is so much a time of just tradition. They want to light some candles, sing some songs. And we kind of went back to the drawing board of, and you kind of pointed to this of the worship experience all the way through keeping the end in mind of just that hospitality. What if that were to be the end in mind, making people feel that comfort, that hospitality. So you really kind of helped us kind of reframe what do we really want people to take their next step? Maybe not engagement, but feeling and just the hospitality. So that's what we kind of talked about, yeah, on our call Monday, and it was good.
Good. Because it may have some strategic implications with where you're spending energy, almost tying back to our earlier conversation around what's the narrative we want this season, right? If there's limited amount of energy, maybe this pushes a little bit on where should we be spending the energy the limited supply of energy that we have to give people the best exposure and endearment possible.
Mhm.
Could be key. Let me give you some practice real quick so we don't run out of time. And if you have something to add, please anytime unmute, interrupt. Here's what it looks like. These are just some practice to rattle off. What Will talks about in his Unreasonable Hospitality book is what he calls obsessively notice people. So this would be an email that should go out or a walk into the office with who's ever in charge of your guest team and just go, man, how do we make sure that people are going to feel noticed, that we're actually looking for those that feel lost, seem to look lost, alone, Maybe they're anxious, they're unsure about being there. They're not as difficult to spot as we think. And so how do we actually not make it awkward? Let's not take it to the other place where we notice people and make it awkward, but where we notice people and make it hospitable, whatever that needs to look like. I think the personalization of it, even a little bit of what Becker just shared around some creativity as far as what people are experiencing from the beginning. Anticipatory care. And again, this isn't just Christmas, by the way. I hope you notice that this is should be all the time, but I think Christmas is a great time to reset. So what are the needs of people as they come in? What are they going to need? What are they going to be about? Right? All those kind of things. Here's 5 quick things, and then we'll move towards a wrap. Maybe go back and train your volunteers if they haven't been noticing people. Create an unreasonable welcome. I don't know what that looks like in your context, but might be worth a 30-minute conversation to go, what would stop someone in their tracks? When you think about, we're talking about in January on our call, talking about power of moments. What would create moments for people as they walk up that would be like, wow, I can't believe the church did that, right? It may be a kid moment. It may be something for that child. How do we turn this third one is kind of interesting. This one I stole from somebody and I don't remember where, or I'd give them credit, but at least I'm not crediting us. But they were talking about how do you turn your greeting hospitality team into a storytelling team? In other words, when you're celebrating afterwards, we would want our team to be telling stories around, I talked to this person and this was the experience they just had, or I just met this person, or I just watched this person live out this value of hospitality. Equip your regulars to be hosts. In other words, don't just depend on your team. Maybe in the prep weeks leading up, as you have moments, prep your entire church to see their role as they come and attend as also part of that. They're hosting the community and those that aren't there yet. And then the last thing I'll say is I would just encourage us to follow up with warmth, not pressure. You probably need to rethink that 2-page email that you want to send to all of the Connect cards on Christmas Eve about your January Sex and Marriage series and how desperately they need to be there, and maybe rethink it just a little bit and gear it a little bit more towards examples like this, right? Where it's like, we're just grateful to have you. How can we serve you? And one that a lot of teams are seeing a ton of traction on now is teams that are using text. Some of you are seeing this. Instead of texting them and trying to get them to sign up for something, it's basically saying, you're seen, you're noticed. How can we pray for you? And the most response teams are getting from texting as a follow-up methodology is typically where they are getting people that are responding that have needs and where we can pray for. So don't crash the best practices as far as for Christmas. Use those and trust that engagement will happen as the Holy Spirit works. Brandon, talk about the automation piece. I saw you put it in there. I know you and I riff about that all the time, but I'll let you riff for 30 seconds on it.
No, I was just going to say I talked to so many churches in our network at Gromentum who they'll have like whatever 50 guests or whatever, and they're like, man, we don't know how to follow up with all of them, so they'll send them some automated process rather than like divide the 50 and treat them with like take the
Divide
time
and
to send them a
conquer.
personal
Yep.
text, like be personal.
Right.
You don't have to, you're not dealing now, obviously in a larger context, if you got 1,000 names, it's understandable. You got to use some sort of system, but people know what automation is and people know what personal is. And if you can make it personal, you will connect stronger with people. It is so much worth the time to do it.
Hey, Lee.
Yes, please go.
Hey, just to Brandon's point, and he's spot on about making things personal. Something we started doing a couple of years ago here we've seen incredible fruit from it. It's time consuming, but it's incredible fruit. So whoever preaches on the Sunday that following week, we've got a separate cell phone that we got for our church. And person that preaches literally sends a personal 1-minute video text to that person, to that connection card. And it's amazing at the response that we've gotten from that. And so again, to Brandon's point about things just being personal, again, it takes a lot of time, right? Because if you got 50, 60, 70 visitors in a week, which is what we're averaging, about 40 or 45, like here's my list for this week, right? And it's a spreadsheet that our team puts together, and you just got to text each person individually a 1-minute text message. So it works.
Come on. That's awesome, Christopher. I know a lot of guys right now, probably on a smaller scale, are starting to experiment a little bit. Please don't take this and implement it now, but They're experimenting with actually sending personal videos from themselves. Like the pastor will say, like, "Hey, Christopher, glad that you were here. Just wanted to send you." So there's some experimentation. I don't know to what. We don't have enough to know yet if that's like offensive or too much. But there are a lot of, especially our church planners, that are using that to go, man, I want to send them a personalized. It's almost like a cameo video, but send them something that actually is something they can interact with. So we'll see how that goes. Any
Yeah,
closing thoughts before we wrap? Christopher, go ahead, bud.
I was just going to say in the few years that we've done it, we've only gotten like maybe 2 or 3 people that have probably been like, no, don't send me another message or something like that.
Leave me alone.
Yeah, 99% are all like, wow, thank you so much. This is amazing,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So
Right. And going back as we close, I want to make sure that any follow-up we're doing, you do you, but I want us to make sure that we're not so crazed about, hey, here's our next step, come to starting point, come to discover all that. Like that feels so out of context with I just visited your church and I lit a candle with my aunt who invited me. I think we need to dial in contextually how we're doing follow-up based on what people when they come to a Sunday, that's different, right? There's a different set of things that should go in there. But this is our one of our biggest outreach times of the year where people are actually in our seats. So our follow-up language, and really somebody put in the chat, I loved it. They were talking about what we want for them. I think it was Tyler. And I love that idea, whatever you decide that is, right? Is that we communicate, man, we would love to pray for you. We'd love to, serve you in whatever way versus here's the 4 things that we would love for you to do next. Let's fight that as much as possible. And frankly, some of you may have to fight that. Austin didn't say this in his comments, but you may have to fight your team on that a little bit because some of you have a connections guy or a groups guy or somebody else who's going to sit in the room and go, yeah, but I've got 100 names that are fresh meat. Let me on them. And so you may need to guide them a little bit on how you allow that to happen. Okay.
Don't be
Cool.
weird.
Well, that's kind of the summary. Thank you for that translation. I appreciate that so much. Hey guys, we're going to wrap up with some prayer before you guys jump off. Just a note, we will not have a call in December because I'm too burned out and tired from Christmas to even think about it. And that's the story I'm going to tell myself. No, but honestly, it's just tough with everything going on. So we will reconvene as a group in January, and we've got some cool stuff that we have going on. We were going to hit that calendaring stuff, but it's a whole thing. So if you're in the midst of calendaring or planning right now and you're curious, 2 things you can do. There's a Monday Fuel that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago that you can read, or you can reach out to one of our guys and say, hey, can you give me 15 minutes to talk through some good practices around that? I'll just say this, if you're all getting in the room with your calendars and you're doing that big wall thing where you all throw your stuff and crap up on the wall, we need to talk because that's not effective and not a good way to do it. So please do not, if you're doing that and that's your calendaring process, please reach out because that's not good. Okay. So anyway, make sure you do that. So no call in December. All right. I'm gonna ask Nate, who is awesome and got out of his car and reconvened with us in his home office. Nate, pray for us. And as you pray, obviously there's maybe hundreds of thousands of people who will gather on Christmas services that are represented in the 40 or 50 people on here. So pray for us, and then we'll all head off into our day.
Yeah, sounds great. God, we look forward with anticipation of what you're going to do in each of our churches this Christmas. God, you already know who's going to be there. And so, Father, I pray that as we do the hard work and prepare for the teams and equip the saints for the ministry, Father, like Lee said, I pray that we will have a posture towards excitement and wonder. And Lord, that we don't miss it. And God, I pray that even now you begin preparing those hearts of grandma and grandpa or the prodigal brother or sister who just has refused to step foot in a church since a loved one died or something terrible happened. God, I pray that you would just now begin softening those hearts. And Lord, that the messages that aren't just preached, but sung, shared from kids greeting as people walk in, just all of those things endear their hearts ultimately to you. And Father, that we would just be a vehicle that you use to change eternities forever. And so, God, I thank you for each man and woman on this call. I pray that you give them strength. I pray that you give them boldness and courage to lead well. And Father, again, I pray that we just don't miss it. And Lord, help us just have eyes to see, ears to hear. And Lord, that we be obedient in response to your Spirit. And so, Father, we love you. And we ask all of this in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. You guys are awesome. We'll talk to you next year. Peace.